Let me ask you something. Have you noticed how many apartment buildings are suddenly appearing everywhere? New towers, new cranes, entire neighbourhoods turning into construction sites. For the last few years, it feels like developments decided that the solution to every problem in America was to build more apartments. But something strange is starting to happen. Projects are now slowing down. Financing is getting harder. And in some cities, developments are quietly being cancelled before they even get started. Which raises a big question. What happens if thousands of apartments projects suddenly stop? Because if that happens, the housing market this year could look very, very different from what people are expecting. And the weird part, it might already be starting. Now, before we go any further, let's be clear about something. America absolutely does need more housing. Anyone who has looked at rent prices lately already knows that. But the problem isn't building apartments. The problem is now how those apartments are getting built. Because most large developments depend on very fragile formulas. Cheap money, confident investors, and renters who can actually afford these finished products. And right now, all three of those things are getting shaky. And if that trend continues, some developers say that in 2026, this year, could be the year that thousands of apartment projects simply just stop moving forward. Now, over the past years in the US saw some of the biggest apartment construction booms in decades. Developers looked at rising rents and thought, well, people clearly want apartments. So cranes went up everywhere. In Dallas, Austin, Phoenix, Nashville, Atlanta, entire skylines started changing, looking like Dubai. In some cities, you couldn't drive 5 minutes without seeing another construction site. It almost felt like a national competition. Who can build the fastest apartment complex? And to be fair, for a while it actually made sense. The demand was high, rents were rising, and money was cheap, which in the real estate world is basically the equivalent of full steam ahead. But what's changing? The environment has started to change. And the biggest reason is simply something very, very simple, and that's interest rates. When borrowing money becomes more expensive, everything in construction starts becoming harder. Developers face bigger loan repayments. Their payments are bigger. Investors become more cautious. And projects that look possible 2 years ago suddenly look a lot riskier. Imagine planning $1 billion apartment complex and then halfway through someone says, oh, by the way, the financing just got a lot more expensive. That's the moment that developers start to sweat. And then you got the rent problem. There's another issue too, the rent. Because building apartments only works if people can afford to live in them. And here's the awkward part. Many of these apartments being built are luxury units with the nice gyms and the nice pool and the fancy rooftop lounges, which sounds great until you see the rent price. Some renters look at those listings and think, wow, beautiful building. Then they see the monthly cost and think, never mind, I'll just live inside my car for the next little while. And if enough renters decide that these prices are too high, developers start facing empty units, which is something that investors hate. And that's when apartment projects can suddenly go from exciting to financially dangerous. And what about these projects that start stalling? In several cities, we're already seeing signs of stress. Some projects are being delayed, other projects quite being redesigned. And some never leave the planning stage at all. Developers look at these numbers and say, maybe we should wait a year, which in construction language basically means we're nervous, because starting a project today means predicting what the housing market is going to look like in 2 or 3 years from now. And right now that future is looking very uncertain. So why does this year matter? Here's where things get interesting, because many of these apartments currently under construction are scheduled to open up mid-year to end of this year, which means a massive wave of new units could hit the market at the same time. And if the demand stays strong, that's fine. But if demand slows down, developers could suddenly be competing for renters. And when landlords compete, prices sometimes start moving in the opposite direction, which is great news for the renters, but it's not great news for the investors who expected endless rent increases. So does this mean an apartment crash is guaranteed? Not really, but the conditions that create the construction boom are certainly changing. Money isn't as cheap, renters aren't as flexible, and developers are starting to notice, which is why some people in the industry are quietly asking the very uncomfortable question, did we build too much too fast? But with all that being said, I'm curious to see what you think. What's your opinion on this matter? Are you someone that's looking to get into the apartment building game? What do you think of the fees? What do you think of the costs? If interest rates start going up, people are not going to be able to afford these apartment buildings. They're not going to be able to afford them. If they stop buying them, is that going to drive the price down? Is it worth committing to buying one of these apartment buildings now? Or wait 2 years? If the interest rates rise, people can't afford to pay their mortgages anymore. There's a flood of 5-year-old apartments coming on the market because people who bought them 5 years ago can't afford them anymore. Then they'll sell them for anything just to get rid of it because they can't afford the high interest rates. But if you've got cash money sitting there, you could be the one to swoop in, lowball the offer, and snap up a bargain. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are, and we'll see you on the next one.
Oregon sells Zen, trees, trails, and a tech-light paycheck that lets you log off at 5 and touch grass. Sounds clean, but here's the catch. Decoupling slams export niches, and higher rates keep mortgages out of reach. The semiconductor bet needs long timelines and steady subsidies that can wobble if DC priorities spin. Downtowns fight public safety and addiction drag. The vibe tax is real. Port strikes and tariff flare-ups ripple to small manufacturers. Office-to-resi conversions move at glacier speed. Families read property crime threads, then bounce to the burbs. Portland's office vacancy and outflow trends aren't your friend. Big chip announcements aren't the same as shovels. Oregon works when vibes equal value. In 2026, they don't. Up next, Washington's scale. Number 8, Washington. Washington looks like a cheat code. Cloud money, airplanes, ports. But here's the catch. Costs spike while trade breathes through a straw. AI build-outs inhale electricity and water. Hydropower helps, yet transmission bottlenecks and new demand push rates north. It's like buying a Tesla, then learning the charger costs more than gas. Data center moratorium chatter pops up, permitting turns combative, and utilities file rate cases. Export rules whiplash Boeing suppliers. Ports juggle Asia tension and origin rules, so throughput wobbles. Farm exporters eat tariffs. Seattle housing still demands a premium while the office core limps. If your paycheck rides global cycles and your bills ride megawatts, 2026 isn't a discount year. East Coast policy hubs next. Number 9, Maryland. Maryland sells proximity, federal money, global organizations, biotech down the red line. That's the pitch. But here's the catch. If DC swaps coalition building for chest thumping, the paychecks shift. Governance and rights programs get trimmed, and the cuts ripple through contractors and NGOs in Bethesda, Rockville, Silver Spring. International hires face visa slowdowns, so research centers stall. NIH holds steady, not generous, while lab build-outs and compliance inflate costs. Think tanks consolidate. Contractors chase fewer, narrower awards. And the traffic? Still a boss fight, even when your project didn't land. If your rent assumed a global problem-solving capital and the capital stopped solving globally, your spreadsheet breaks. If the Beltway halo dims, does New England's finance light hedge hold up? Number 10, Connecticut. Hedge fund country without the hedge. Connecticut's sales pitch is clean. Great schools, quiet streets, and a commute to capital, or a hedge fund desk in your bonus room. Sounds safe. But here's the catch. If Wall Street leans into defense, energy, and AI infrastructure, Fairfield County's premium looks heavy. High property taxes and legacy costs chew cash flow. Coastal insurance creeps up with flood exposure. Remote teams hire in Florida and Texas, so comp thins here. Fewer bonus cycles mean fewer steak nights and slower Main Street. Office parks chase biotech conversions that live or die on grants and visas. Commuter rail is elite if you need Midtown, brutal if you don't. So the arbitrage shrinks.